Hello and welcome. I am Gimba Umar. Tonight, South Africa's President Jacob Zuma visits Nigeria, promises to return funds stashed in his country, also to work with Nigeria on electricity generation. President Muhammadu Buhari addresses concerns with South Africa's president on fines imposed on MTN, says it's more of security than financial matter. Tragedy in Lagos as 6 die following collapse of a 5-story building in the Lekki area. And United Nations raises concerns over EU-Turkey plan on the migrant crisis, says it could contravene international law.
And on business news tonight, Lagos State government moves to eliminate discrimination against women to fast-track economic growth.
On sports news, Super Falcons striker Azizat Oshola wants FIFA to focus on the development of women football in Africa.
And from Abuja, EFCC arraigns former Minister of Niger Delta Affairs, Godstay Orubebe, over alleged false declaration of assets.
We begin tonight with a definite pronouncement from South Africa's President, Mr. Jacob Zuma, that his government will ensure monies confiscated by South African authorities during the last regime are returned to Nigeria. Visiting Mr. Zuma said this today after holding bilateral talks with President Muhammadu Buhari at the presidential villa in Abuja. Our correspondent, Chukuma Onokusi, reports.
The presidential villa is his first port of call. And the host presidents rolled out the drums to celebrate and accord him full presidential honors. Inspects the guards mounted by the Presidential Guard of Honor. And introduced to a number of Nigerian and South African businessmen and ministers. For over 2 hours, President Buhari and South African President discussed several issues aimed at deepening relationship between two countries. They also reviewed the over 30 bilateral agreements the two countries have signed over the year.
We have noted with satisfaction the ever-growing cooperation in many sectors, including trade and investment, defense and security, immigration matters, energy, mineral resources, to mention but a few.
South Africa and Nigeria have good bilateral relationship that dates back to the liberation days, but has been rubbished by issues like xenophobia and what have you. What is the situation today?
As you know, it's absolutely an unfortunate thing because all Africans are the same. The fact that colonialists drew borders and made us to think we are different. We are the same Africans. The two governments are working on those matters. The relevant structures are working on it. There are some that have been discovered and recovered, but there are some that the necessary departments are doing investigation. We would certainly appreciate if we succeed in recovering all other issues that, or all other things that would be in South Africa illegal, so that they would be returned back.
On his part, the Nigerian president for the first time addressed the relationship between one of the companies operating in Nigeria and the regulatory body, NCC.
The concern of the federal government was basically on the security, not the fine imposed on MTN. You know how the unregistered GSM are being used by terrorists. And between 2009 and today, at least 10,000 Nigerians were killed by Boko Haram. At least 10,000. That was why NCC asked the MTN and Glo and the rest of them to register GSMs. Unfortunately, MTN was very, very slow and contributed to the casualty. This is why NCC looked at its regulation and enforced that fine on them.
President Buhari says Africa deserves a place in the Security Council seat of the United Nations. He sympathizes with South Africans on the unfortunate building collapse that claimed some lives in Lagos and promised to do all to consolidate the relationship between the two countries. Chukwuma Onwekusi, Channels Television News.
Meanwhile, Mr. Zuma has addressed the joint session of the National Assembly, where he first applauded Nigeria's conduct of the 2015 election. He also acknowledged the role played by Nigeria in dismantling apartheid and the massive admission given to South African students in Nigeria during that period. The South African president also called for improved economic ties between the two countries. He was accompanied to the National Assembly by his host, Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari.
South African President Jacob Zuma arrives at the National Assembly, accompanied by the President of Nigeria, Muhammadu Buhari. Welcoming him to the Alu chambers, the Senate President Dr. Bukola Saraki says President Zuma's visit is symbolic of the great relationship between the two countries.
Your visit today speaks volumes on how much your government and the great people of South Africa value and cherish the fledgling bilateral relationship Nigeria has with South Africa.
This was reaffirmed by the South African president, who praised Nigeria's role in liberating South Africa from apartheid rule.
The people of Nigeria provided unwavering support and solidarity to the people of South Africa to unseat the last bastion of colonialism in Africa.
President Zuma also hailed the conduct of Nigeria's 2015 general elections.
In 2015, the people of Nigeria proved Afro-pessimists wrong by the manner in which you conducted the elections, thus facilitating a democratic change of government.
After which he called for improved trade relations between the two nations, especially in the areas of electricity, agriculture and tourism.
There is room for greater business-to-business engagements, particularly in the areas Nigeria has identified as potential growth sectors. These include diversification of the economy, namely electricity generation and supply, agriculture and agro-processing, tourism development, including the hospitality sector, mining, banking, infrastructure development, aviation, manufacturing, and the automotive sector.
The Chibok goals were also not forgotten in President Jacob Zuma's speech.
We remain hopeful and trust that your efforts to find and secure those children will bear positive results.
Finally, he urged Africa to unite to fight all the forces that bring harm and suffering to the continent, and he got some response from the Speaker of the House of Representatives.
We, as representatives of the people, seek that this brotherhood between our leaders translates to good relations between citizens of both countries, and it is only then, and only then, that both countries can speak to true integration of our peoples in the interests of our continent.
Though sometimes fraught with disagreement, South Africa and Nigeria enjoy good bilateral relations underpinned by strong historical ties dating back to the years of the liberation struggle. Temitope Fagbemi reporting for Channels Television News.
Well, federal lawmakers also say they expect Nigeria to build on the visit of South Africa's President Jacob Zuma and cater better bilateral relations between the two countries. The lawmakers were speaking after President Zuma addressed the joint session of the National Assembly. Our correspondent, Lanre Lasisi, reports.
President Jacob Zuma of South Africa addressing a joint session of the National Assembly. His speech was well received by the parliament. The president of South Africa says there is a need for stronger diplomatic ties between Nigeria and South Africa in the bid to move the continent towards peace and prosperity. Lawmakers described the visit as historic.
So it was historic on many fronts, and it was a welcome development to foster relationships between the two countries. Relationships that have been up and down, but will go back a long way. And this will help. This will help in propelling, the relationship between Nigeria and South Africa.
They also comment on the speech, especially where he touched on the role Nigeria played in the fight against apartheid.
While it was very enlightening and, I just think he was preaching to the wrong audience. I would hope that this story is told more and more times to South Africans so that when they see Nigerians who are working very hard and living in South Africa, that we are accorded the reciprocity that Nigeria accorded the people of South Africa in their hour of need.
The lawmakers were, however, optimistic that both countries stand to benefit from the visit.
They have good agric. I think we can also benefit in that area. They have good telecoms. They have a few companies and areas that we can benefit. Yes, they can also benefit from us.
The idea is that the two countries have identified a need to work together, a need to get along, and that's the first step. That identification has been made. And how to not dot the I's and cross the T's is for the two parliaments to look into, and we will do that.
They agree that Nigeria must build on this visit to create better bilateral relations with South Africa and also build bridges of partnership. Lanre Lasisi, Channels Television News.
And in part two, after the break, federal government applauds decision by Switzerland to return $321 million the Abuja loot. Stay with us.